Can you hear me? We're going to dive right in. So there's been a lot of concerns about tariffs, recession, tightening economy. Everything you read in the news seems like it's doom and gloom. I want to take an opposite approach. I want to say it's maybe the best time to be bold, to step out, to do the hard thing, as Nick talked about us earlier. And when you have the doubters, turn that around to inspire you and work even harder. So I want to talk to a couple of brands here that are doing that are making the bold moves and the big bets, and learn from them a little bit today. I want to start off a question here with Scott. What's one bold decision the Raiders have made as an organization in the last year, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So from a sports organization standpoint, it's a little bit of a different setup than your traditional organizations, right? We have the football side and then we have the business side. And the two really are, I would say, in silos for the most part. So I'll give you a two-part answer to that. The last big decision we just made was hiring Pete Carroll as the head coach, right? We've gone through a lot of change from a head coaching perspective. And from the outside, you don't really look at a change like that to really impact the business side, but it definitely makes a huge difference from our perspective, right? And I oversee the partnership sales side. So when you see Allegiant Stadium and Ford and Coke and all these big partners that we work with. So from a head coach perspective, just to give you a little bit of a insight to how some of these decisions happen, right? When Pete comes in, he's got all different coaches, different systems, different processes. He may not want to be as forward as, like, say, Antonio Pierce was with dealing with sponsors. And, there's a direct impact on our side of the business. So whenever a decision like that happens, it's like your CEO being changed and you're not sure what their strategy is. And, they come in and you're like, okay, we got to kind of feel this out, So we call friends, around the league. Hey, Seattle, how was Pete to work with? What things can we anticipate? So we can start to get ahead of those things, whether we have clients that had head coach appearances, so if Coke had an event at our stadium and a head coach appearance was supposed to happen, we know to get ahead of that, and it's like, okay, we got to go to somebody else within the organization. So that's a big decision that just happened. And then from a business perspective, we're always looking at different partners. We're always trying to generate revenue. So a big one that we made a leap on this year was a company called Seaside Events. So we basically put on a fan cruise, right? There's a lot of concerns internally, right? Liability, right? We're bringing fans on a cruise, alumni, our organization is going to be present. So there's a lot of liability that goes with that. So
how did it go?
It was good. The last 2 days, the boat lost propulsion or something like that, and so they had to kind of sputter back to port. But overall, it was awesome. And I would say from that perspective, that's where we really got insight to, the experiential side for our fans, like wanting to be connected with the team more, right? How do you create these moments and opportunities for fans to be connected? And so I think that was probably a big learning from that.
That's awesome. And Scott has generated nearly $1 billion worth of commercial revenue in his career, so he knows what he's talking about. So, Harv, anything you'd comment on in regards to some of the big bets or bold moves that Redmond's made? Just maybe an example.
For most of you, this is probably not a big bet, but for us at Redmond, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Redmond and what we do. We own a salt mine in central Utah. And so for the longest time, we were really concerned about animal health, and so we would make these blocks of salt and sell them. And then we started making real salt, which is an unrefined salt. And then we had some other ideas, and we built a bunch of brands, and they all looked very different. And you couldn't tell whether it was if it was an animal lick block or a relight. It really looked like you couldn't tell they were from the same company. And so our big bold move about 12 or 13 months ago was making a decision on whether or not we were going to be a house of brands or a branded house. And we decided to go with a branded house. And so the story actually starts 62 or 63 years ago. About 10 years ago, we started asking this Indian guy in India if he would sell Redmond.com. So a little bit of advice, don't ask every year for 10 years if he's willing to sell the same domain. because the price just keeps going up. So we learned a really great lesson. We actually did end up buying Redmond.com this last year. We spent
You can ask him after how
a lot
much.
of money on it, and the guy was very happy, and we were okay happy, like so. But that was our big bold move: is are we a house of brands, or are we a branded house? And we've gone with the branded house piece, and you're going to start seeing, if you're familiar with Redmond, you're going to start seeing all of our products sort of look the same and feel the same with the same kind of messaging, because it really is the same. We care about your health. We care about really natural, really good products, and we'll see how it turns out.
So I last night over text was trying to convince Harvey to wear his Real Men Like It Raw shirt, and you'll have to ask him what that means afterwards too. But he has some exciting things maybe to share there. Lastly, for Chris, maybe a bold move from Banner. Now, Banner is one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. They're massive. And, it's hard to make sometimes bold moves when you're a large organization. So I'd be curious to kind of hear his thoughts on this and some bigger bets that Banner has made.
Yeah, so doing things well is easy and fun. Doing things well at scale is the big challenge. And Banner is scattered across 6 states. We have about $16 billion in revenue. We're, I think, the 9th largest health system in the U.S. And with that comes a lot of providers. We have close to 10,000 overall. About 5,000 are patient-facing, and then we have 55,000 employees that have a lot of opinions on how things should be. Especially in the marketing space, we all know that everybody's a critic of the marketing stuff. So Nick's advice, I'm going to take some of that home with me. One of the biggest challenges in healthcare is access. So many of you have probably tried to get in with your doctors, and depending on the specialty, dermatology is notorious for this in particular. It's like 3 to 6 month wait. Your appointments get canceled for no reason, and sometimes your insurance goes in and out of network, and that's just super frustrating. And consumers are coming to healthcare providers as in moments of vulnerability, and so trying to make a very complicated thing like scheduling easy is a lot harder than it sounds. And so what we've been able to do over the last few years is really increase our simplicity for consumers by tackling those complexities of scheduling availability, how to make appointment slots available in real time. We shop for restaurants and hotel rooms all the time, and it just seems really seamless. And so that's the experience we aim to deliver. And in the past year, we've really ramped up our scheduling capabilities. And this past year, 2024, we booked about 500,000 appointments online. And if you think about the normal pathways, you tend to make phone calls to schedule. You're on hold forever. I think we field about 9 million phone calls a year through our contact center. And so, and each call costs $10. So if you think about the cost of fielding phone calls versus doing it online and doing it in a way that reaches people where they are and they can schedule when they want, it makes it a hell of a lot easier for parents that are trying to figure out what's going on with their kid and get seen the next day, or do a telehealth appointment. So it's not like sexy and things that get people excited generally, except unless you're at a healthcare conference, which I was just at last week, and everybody was super excited about the things we were sharing.
You're always a superhero in the right environment.
Yes, exactly. But I think at the end of the day, simplicity wins, and so we're all battling in this attention economy, and when you have that coupled with stress and anxiety of a healthcare issue, if you can just make things a little bit easier for somebody, either externally or internally, then that becomes a bold move.
So thank you, and I wanted just to queue up real quick a video from Banner to kind of help us see what they're doing.
So what do you
I'm already
think?
getting goosebumps.
Maybe I can handle this after all.
I knew you'd get there. Some things just take time. You're doing so great. You got this.
So you talked a little bit about this, but just one more follow-up, Chris. How are you using data to further personalize that customer journey? So clearly you're shifting to this online scheduling, simplifying that for the consumers. How does data continue to help you know where and how to pivot from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, so data was involved in the making of this. We needed to know who we were speaking to, so the persona. We call her Sophia. She's a mom that's quarterback for her family, care for her kids, care for her parents. She speaks Spanish and English, and so not knowing who you're speaking to, it creates an obstacle, and you can become irrelevant really quickly if you don't know that information, and that's qualitative and quantitative data. So starting at that brand side, and then know what you're aiming for. So our goal is really to drive preference. I'm sure you've all been impressed, and I'm saying impressed like meaning you saw them, not you're wowed by them. Healthcare ads. I mean, it's a sea of sameness. Everybody's got their U.S. News and World Report. We're the top, baby toe surgery clinic in Western Utah or whatever. Like, I mean, that's just the way most of that looks because it's copycatting. Banner has taken a bold approach to really understand the who, what, when, where, why, and connect emotionally first, so we are top of mind when it comes to healthcare brand preference, and then using that data, following along in the journey, finding those points of friction, removing those obstacles, and then working with smart agencies to really get the cheapest possible conversion so that you can do that over and over and over again. And the Kudos platform actually was, I was like, oh, this could be something that would make a lot of sense to healthcare marketers because.
Thanks for the endorsement.
Yeah, of course. I'm your hype man. But I mean, again, budgets in healthcare, you can imagine. I mean, we do $16 billion in revenue, but what hits the bottom line is, table scraps relative to other industries. So we have to be really scrappy, and data is the guide to getting us more connection to care for more people in those moments that matter.
Wonderful. So we all love sports. I want to shift gears for a moment and show this video and then ask Scott a question.
There's no other fan base in the world like them. Leave your mark here.
That's different from all of us.
And it's unlike anywhere.
Play hard and smart. We're dominating the game. This game gonna put us on the map. Yes, sir. Let's go. Take what you want.
Welcome to the Death Star.
With a $2 billion price tag, everything here at Allegiant Stadium is state-of-the-art, high-end luxury.
Capacity, 65,000 strong. A gridiron masterpiece, painted in silver and black. Its flame burning bright in honor of an icon.
And after you have great coaches, you get great players, and you tell them one thing: just win, baby.
And do it in the entertainment capital of the world, where showtime is synonymous with game time.
I told y'all what we gonna do.
Welcome to the home of the Las Vegas Raiders. A state-of-the-art training facility.
Brand new, it looks absolutely incredible. The greatest facilities in the NFL right now.
A rich history decorated with gold jackets.
A lot of football players around the country that want to wear that silver and black. I was fortunate enough to wear it.
Long live the King!
We have had a tradition with the Raiders that winning was the most important thing. Winning is is all that matters.
The commitment to excellence.
Your commitment to excellence and your will to win will endure forever. You will not get it.
And he gets to the sack.
This is the destination for the stars. Join the dark side. Once a Raider,
The autumn wind is a pirate.
always a Raider.
I'm proud to have played my entire career with the Raiders.
Welcome to the future.
It's the dawn of a new era.
Your future is now.
Now, if that doesn't make you want to go to a Raiders game, I don't know what will.
Once a Raider, always a Raider. That's something that's been with the franchise forever, right? If you've played, one down or you've been with the organization 20 years, the tradition and being an alumni, is so essential, and it's a core part of our business, right? And so we have an alumni team that oversees 1,000 to 1,500 alumni, where they actively reach out to on a regular basis, right? We do wellness checks on them. So we're, I would say, at the forefront of how we deal with our alumni. We bring them back for games, right? They're very involved in the ethos of everything we do. So much so that it definitely takes a lot of organizational power to make sure that we're doing that for them. And so, from a global perspective, right, I think one of the things that, how do we stay ahead of all this? Well, we moved to the entertainment capital of the world. Obviously, that was a big deal. When we go back to making this move, one of the slides that we had in our pitch deck when we first started kind of telling the story was, Vegas didn't need the Raiders. Vegas needed a 65,000 seat stadium, right, to host all these big events. So that's been a massive opportunity, right? Post Malone we just had, we've had, the Rolling Stones, Taylor Swift, massive events that, indirectly put our organization from a Raiders perspective kind of side by side with these events. So, it definitely helps from a visibility standpoint for our team.
Love that. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about Redmond now. I don't know how many of you are health conscious, wanting to, you've hit that middle age, as Nick talked about a little bit, and wanting to eat healthier. And Harvey teed it up a little bit, but I want to just share a short video that speaks to who Redmond is and where they're headed, and then ask a question. And if you haven't been down to their salt mine, it's pretty awesome.
Well, you better calm down. 'Cause we're all friends around you, just join the fun. 'Cause if you're in a hurry, you're missing the point. You should enjoy the fruits of life.
That's that raw milk we were talking about.
Because it's a beautiful day. Isn't so come on, let's play. So you're in a hurry? Well, you better calm down. We're all friends around you, just join the fun.
So I'm going to pause that for just a second because I want to hear
I think
from
it's like a
Harvey.
17-minute video.
But I will say this. I've been with Harvey all over the world. I've been with him in the middle of Africa, and he's pitching farmers on Redmond. This man is passionate. And being able to kind of think globally and continue to kind of push forward with that ethos he spoke on. How is Redmond carving out a distinctive space in that health and wellness market, especially so many companies from the natural, brand positioning are trying to kind of own that. What's Redmond doing to kind of really lean in?
For us, this is not a pivot into natural. We were born natural, I think. And so, from our very, very early roots, we've always been interested in natural, whole health. And I don't know how much you know about Redmond, but we actually own 5 grocery stores. We have a raw milk dairy. We raise our own pork. We have our own chickens. And we're talking like not just like 5 chickens. We have, I don't know, 2,500 chickens or something. So if you go to our grocery stores, all the meat there comes from, it's from us. Like we care for it, we love it, we know it, and we do it in a way that that we can feel proud about, that we can actually bring our moms to and our brothers to and introduce the food to them. So we love the fact that we have not just a digital footprint, but we have a brick and mortar footprint right here in our community. And if you have problems with us, you know where to find us. We're not hiding anywhere. So it's not been a pivot to something natural. It's been an outgrowth of actually who we are. And I think it goes right back to our CEO, Rhett Roberts. Rhett Roberts went to BYU, left BYU, and joined this little company called Redmond. I think they were doing $1 million in revenue when they joined him, or when he joined them. And they were kind of tapped out. They weren't sure how to grow the business, and so they sold him the business, and Rhett had this incredible dream about what he was trying to build. And so from 1992, I think, when Rhett took over the business to today, we've grown. We've got 700 employees. We're doing just short of $200 million in revenue. We're a thriving small business right here in Utah. And so yeah, back to your question, Phil. It wasn't for us. It wasn't a pivot or trying to become natural. We are natural. This is who we are. Awesome. Yeah.
In just a moment, we're going to pass the mic around for anyone that has questions for these gentlemen. But I want to ask just a couple of more before we wrap up. Going back to Chris, what's a leadership principle or mindset that's guided you through some of this complexity, some of the growth, some of the change that you've seen over the last several years in healthcare? What leadership principle or mindset has helped you there?
Yeah, so healthcare is a very empathy-driven business. I don't think you can be in that industry without having empathy, and empathy is impossible to fake. So for me, I think it's just leaning in with that empathy and thinking about your team members. I worked at Banner throughout the pandemic, and as the largest employer and largest caregiver in the state of Arizona, we were faced with just constant change and voices on kind of every side of the spectrum commenting on our whether it's in front of our caregivers or on our social channels, and that wears people down, hearing a lot of negativity or polarizing comments. And even today, I mean, I was talking about the access challenges. Billing's another favorite of folks online to talk about. And so empathy as a leader is really important, because you can't let the negativity sort of cloud your vision and the greater good that you're really trying to deliver to patients and to as a sort of champion of your team. And so that also helps build resilience. And I was inspired by Nick's comments about breaking his back. I mean, this is I deal with that side of the house. So hearing the inspiring stories of how people come back from challenges and do things in a way that is greater than they thought was possible. That's really what I am proud of my team at Banner Health, is that collectively, very small team but brilliant minds that have come together at a special time to deliver excellence. And I think that is because we all care about each other. We have each other's backs.
Thank you. Harvey, what's one decision you've made in the last year that's changed how you lead?
I actually want to clear something up first. You said that I wear a shirt that says "Real men like it raw." That's not true, but I'm going to make that shirt. I have a shirt that says raw milk on the front, and then it says pasteurization is for weenies on the back. But real men do like it raw. I really like that.
I want to coin that.
Well, if you have to trademark it before I do, so. What was the question? Sorry.
What's a decision you've made in the last year that's changed how you lead?
I think, so at Redmond, we have what we call our 5 pillars, and the second pillar is one called, it's a made-up word. We like to make up words, but it's called oculism. Any ideas on what oculism means? Something about sight, right? So we did have one of our core things was openness, and we didn't really like openness. It felt too open. So we like this word oculism, and what oculism means, it means understanding the smallness of your own perspective. And I think so often we hire experts because they're expert, mostly because we want them to do work that we probably can't do or shouldn't be doing. But I also think that we hire experts. At Redmond, we choose our partners very, very carefully because we want experts who don't act like experts, who remain open and remain sort of agile with us, to think that they don't know everything. They know more than we do about that thing, but we know some things too, right? So oculism to me is a really important word. When I go into any meeting with anybody, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I know that. And I think knowing that and sort of setting your ego aside and not having to be right about everything all the time is actually a superpower. It takes all the pressure off, and you can actually just show up ready to make a contribution. And for us at Redmond, that's really important. So
Yeah, I love that. Challenge for the day, use ocular or oculism in your conversation.
Not ocular.
Just naturally.
Oculism.
Okay, oculism, we'll go with that. One last question for Scott. What's a valuable lesson you've learned due to a recent failure or an unexpected outcome? Lesson learned.
I thought I was going to get the leadership one. I caught the tail end of Nick's presentation, and I live by that, right? Failure is what you need, right? And I think it's a little bit of leadership, but it's also something I learned is, stop trying to solve employee problems, right? You rob them of learning and failing, right? And I think that's a very essential piece, from a leadership perspective. But then also in failures where I've tried to solve problems and then it ends up bad and then it's my fault, right? Because it was my idea, right? So I've switched from like somebody comes in and they want a promotion and you have to sit down and have a conversation. Now we all know that, not everybody can get a promotion or get paid more, but I flip it on them and it's, hey, put together a presentation. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What are you going to do to get that? Right now it's not my, I have no control over that, and now I've taken the pressure off myself to try to figure something out for them. So I feel like that's been a big piece that I've learned through failing, just being the situation flipped back and pressure put on me. I've taken that and tried to flip it back on them.
I love that. Let others solve their own problems. Good application, not just in business, but life. We'd love to hear from you. Do we have any questions? Just raise your hand and we'll bring a mic to you. Got a question back here.
So the Raiders Stadium in Vegas is pretty epic, but there had been some pretty big concerns with relocating a franchise. What was the main concerns to your brand as a whole with that relocation?
I mean, you're always dealing with, right, in Oakland's had a challenge of, teams staying there, right? You had the Golden State leave, you had the A's, you had us, right? So, fans never love that, and, no team, wants to leave, but then, you're obviously in a situation where, the economics need to make sense to keep a team there, and if you don't have the buy-in and not everybody's supportive, like, I'll give you an example. I worked for the Cowboys and the Jones family for 10 years, and the stadium was supposed to be built in Dallas, but the mayor of Dallas very, very, very much disliked Jerry Jones. Right, so she put, I think it was like $400 or $500 million to building a bridge, over one of the rivers in Dallas instead of having the stadium there, right? So there's all these very intricate, things that happen from a political perspective that impact, the consumer and the fans. It's unfortunate, but obviously, again, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie The Butterfly Effect, but I think about that stuff a lot, right? And it's like you have all these situations that happen in your life, and you don't realize something 20 years ago, how it's going to impact you today, or who you would have met, or how you would have crossed paths with that person. And what I mean by that is, right, we had a team based out of LA for a while. So we built a huge fan base in Southern California, right? So then when we make the move to Vegas, it becomes a 2.5, 3 hour drive for that big fan base. So, right, you upset, some fans for sure up in Oakland, and now we have a fan base that's, ecstatic because they're a lot closer. So, it's definitely a challenging situation, but, again, Vegas has been an awesome opportunity for us. We went from dead last in revenue to number 2 behind the Cowboys, right? And, those things make a difference from an organization standpoint. And now you bring in the ownership of, Tom Brady, which is extremely ironic, the fumble that happened in New England, Charles Woodson, so it's very interesting that you had somebody that the Raiders fan base hated forever now is a part owner. So again, butterfly effect, if you stay up there, all of these things don't happen, and you don't know what, where the team would be today. So, so far it's been, we haven't really had a lot of backlash.
I'm a Patriots fan. That definitely was not a fumble. That was an incomplete pass.
Ironically, I'm from New England too, so no comment.
Do we have any other questions? Got one right back there.
This would be for any of you, because I can imagine that having a successful business, you've been in lawsuits before. Spend the money in a lawsuit to win, or spend the money on marketing to win in that way. Does that make sense?
So do you pay the attorneys or do you pay Meta and Google? I think is the question.
I think that's highly situational. I won't discuss details, but we've got a couple lawsuits not related to our food stuff, but something else. And this is a discussion we have internally all the time. Do we want to try to change the public sort of awareness of what's happening, or do we really want to just double down on legal stuff? And it's highly, highly situational.
I was just say, unrelated from a Raiders perspective, just my 2 cents, is again very situational, right? And unfortunately, we're in a day and age where, you're guilty before proven innocent. So once that first article comes out, there's no follow-up story on, hey, actually, we were wrong, and that person is, they're doing great work. Like, that doesn't happen, in today's day and age, and we deal with it, from a sports perspective, because everybody thinks, Monday comes, they're the Monday morning GM, of an organization, and, why decisions were made. And typically the public, and consumers are usually off in terms of like how things, decisions get made within sports organizations. So it's interesting. It's an interesting question, but, I think I agree, very situational.
Yeah, and healthcare is, one of the most regulated industries out there. And there's a lot of action going on in the healthcare provider space related to your question. I would say that, you have to, like from an earned media perspective, that's the power of voice, that you can control the narrative. So, trying to keep the negative as quiet as possible while amplifying the positive is sort of the moving target as these things come up.
Any final questions before we wrap up? I wanted to ask a question of these brands. So speaking of making bold moves and smart bets, any final words as you think about the remainder of this year and planning for your organizations? Any words of advice and counsel you might give?
My thought process around that is, is one of my favorite things is just, I don't know if you've ever seen Ted Lasso, right? be curious, right? It's one of my things that I just enjoy, because I think if you're curious, you look to solve problems. And for me, that's, I think, how you stay innovative, right? That's how you keep up with AI. That's how you keep up with what's going on is by just staying curious. Like, how do I improve this? Can it get better, right? It's like nails on a chalkboard for me when somebody says that, it's just the way that it's been. I can't stand that. And, I'm always looking, even if the answer's always been that, like, you almost want to have somebody in the room that literally is there to, just disrupt your thought and think differently. Well, what about this? Everybody's agreeing over here, but, have you thought about this? So I would say stay curious.
And question everything.
Correct. Yeah, I was told I should have been a lawyer because I argued everything. But as I got older, I feel like I'm, on the slimmer percentage of I actually enjoy that side, now versus being, so defensive over arguing it. But, now at least, I found my own path and I'm comfortable with that.
Harvey or Chris?
For us, I would say every business is a people business. You can only go as far as you have people to take you. So we use this, and I'm sure it's familiar for everybody, but we use this this idea of getting people on the bus first, finding the right people to be on the bus, and then allowing them to find the right seat. We've hired HR people that are actually not HR people, they're more accountants, and so they get to switch over. In fact, at Redmond, we say, if you're in the same job a year and a half after you join Redmond, you're probably doing something wrong. But we just want to find the right people. And I think if you find the right people, you can weather any storm. And so for us, it's about getting the right people on the bus and then allowing them and helping them find the right seat.
And that's true of Redmond. I've been to their headquarters before, and you go start to talk to people and how long have you been here? And it's usually not counting years, it's decades. And it's just shocking to find someone that's worked for an organization for 20, 25, 30 years, but that's pretty familiar to those at Redmond. Final words, Chris?
Yeah, I would say, you can't see the road ahead through the rearview mirror. So, we were talking about data earlier, and I see data is the rearview mirror view because, it's sort of telling you what's already happened. And it's also a good way to anticipate, blind spots or problems that might be lurking that would trip you up in the foreground. So using sort of the past as a guide, but not planning from past decisions, I think is going to bode well, especially with how rapidly things change and, with, AI or, the fears or the benefits that come from that. Good planning and good thinking and thinking about your customers and your people are always going to be winning bets, no matter how fast things change.
Thank you, and let's give a big round to our panelists today.